Fred Again Actual Life 1, because he has two other actual lives. I actually came across Fred Again on a Boiler Room set, which is kind of weird because I didn't used to watch Boiler Room sets, so in a way, not only did I get introduced to Fred Again, I also got introduced to Boiler Room, so that was cool, and I was pretty impressed with it. I was vibing all the time, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty fucking good. I've heard it a couple of times because I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. So, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then I went to watch a lot of his other performances and a lot of the albums and everything. And I mean, what a discovery, because definitely this guy is just like the songs. I think it just gives a complete different dimension to what EDM songs can actually be. I think oftentimes we're so used to EDM songs just being this, dancing, because I guess it's electronic dancing or electronic dance music. So I guess that it's very focused on the dancing, but this really gives a different dimension to what, especially when it comes to the vibing. I think a lot of these songs can just be vibed to more than dancing. A lot of these albums especially feels like a slice of life, if you will. And it's basically like it has that perspective of someone living, and I think that's why it's so good at connecting with people, especially emotionally, right? Because it feels like a lot of the songs you're just hanging out with your friends, or you're listening to them, or you're seeing them express themselves, and that has such a deeper and more emotional tone to it as a result, and they can express that much more in the songs than other EDM, or even just pop songs or whatever. Like, I have heard a lot of ballads and everything that have not been as deep or as emotional to me as a lot of songs in this album, right? The vulnerability of a lot of the songs, like for example, me slash, or in parenthesis, Evie, is just really cool to see from an EDM artist, primarily because the electronic part can really be so diverse and create so many interesting sounds that in a way it is a bit of a shame that everyone sort of just focus on the, I guess, dancing part, and especially on the making beats for the drop and everything, right? And kind of forgets the more, I guess, nuanced aspects of music, especially like emotion and everything. Not saying that Fred Again is unique on this regard or anything like that. Obviously there have been plenty of artists, especially the more old school, a lot of the more old school EDM really did have a lot of that perspective that a lot of other genres also have when it comes to the emotion and everything. But I feel that there is definitely an abundance of songs that don't do that, and that's fine. I mean, it's fine, but this one just like does it in such a different way, because again, it's more vibing. Like, it's like the album is not trying to make you emotional, it's just trying to make you vibe with emotion. It's a bit different in that regard. And songs like Me, for example, aren't exactly even vibing, they're just very, well, I mean, they're kind of heavy, I guess. They're just very vulnerable, and that vulnerability is really what just gives this album so much more depthness and allows people to actually connect to it. I feel that it's hard to make songs that are vulnerable and that you show people that are vulnerable, but I think that the style that Fred Again does it in makes it so much easier for people to connect, because the songs are also much easier to understand and get into. A lot of them don't follow a lot of the patterns of other EDM songs, so it makes it much easier. On top of that, you have the interludes, which in this case actually really add a lot of value to that sort of slice of life atmosphere that I talked about at the beginning, making it feel like, again, you're following more someone's journey or a life than you're just listening to some songs or listening to some album. You're essentially seeing what makes someone human, the relationships that they have, how they interact with their friends, the moment they live, and that is where a lot of the emotion comes from. That's where a lot of the deepness and the just overall very interesting moments that are really relatable to people, that's where this comes from, right? Because again, a lot of the songs would be bangers if it without the emotional aspect to it, but the emotional aspect just really gives them that depthness that I think that really helps a lot of the songs in this album really stand out. For example, one of my favorites, and I think by far my favorite, is called Sabrina, I Am a Party. Basically, what he did was he grabbed a slam poetry, or a poetry slam poetry, performance, and just added electronic music to it. If you don't know, it's on YouTube. You can go and watch it. It's pretty popular video. It has quite a bit of views, I think. And he essentially just used that performance and used the electronic sounds to not just enhance the emotion, but also transform it into something more subdued, but something that is more, they can be carried away with, rather than the original performance of the slam poetry, or the slam poet, or poem or whatever, is very harsh, right? It's very emotional, it's very heavy. But with a song, it feels like you're more eased into it. You're more melancholic going into it. That's how it makes you feel. It doesn't make you feel so on edge and uncomfortable. It makes you more feel melancholic and kind of, understanding of what's going on. And on top of that, with Fred again singing in it, it makes everything feel so much more real, so much more vulnerable, so much more connected, because I think it's easy to sample certain phrases and stuff like that and use them in songs, but then when you are singing alongside it and essentially repeating parts of the performance and everything, I think it makes the song feel so much more connected to you, and it makes everything just gel so much more together and be so much more emotional together, right? So overall, this is sort of what the album does a lot. There's a couple of songs that are a bit more upbeat, and much, I guess, nicer to vibe with, I guess. But then you also have songs that are missed, like the last song, for example. It's a complete vibe, but it also has a very touching message, the message of someone talking about what they lost during the pandemic, and how hard it was for them and everything. It's a really nice message, but it's also a very, kind of upbeat song that you can kind of dance to and you can kind of vibe with. But again, it's sort of like, that's the best part about Fred Against songs, is that because you sort of get carried in this emotion, it's like a river, you just get carried through it continuously. That makes it much easier to digest a lot of the songs and makes it much easier to digest a lot of the emotion. So even if you have a technically more happy, I guess, quote unquote, dancing song with a very, deep message or more, melancholic message, it still works because of that vibe, because of that style that Fred again uses. It's a very unique style to him, because while other artists have done it before, it's like he does it in a very him way. And I think that all of these is perfectly exemplified by the studio live thing that he did for the album, where essentially he grabbed the songs and he just played them all, not live in front of a crowd, but live as in, like he just recorded sort of a live performance for it, and all of it just fits so seamless together without the interludes even, right? A lot of it just fits. It's an experience, basically. If you have not watched the live, it's an experience, to say the least. All of the songs come together, all of the songs sort of marry in this perfect seamless style, and it's just a vibe from beginning to end, and I promise you, it's that fucking good. It's just that good. For an EDM album, and for an EDM artist, this is the type of thing that I love, because this is the type of thing that makes you go, oh, people can actually do that with music. I didn't know that, but people can actually do that with music. That's really interesting, that's what makes you engage to music and engage to art, and be able to see the capabilities of what people can actually do with it. So overall, and while I did like a lot of the songs here, I think it's missing that little thing, to make it perfect. But for a first album, this is a solid 9 out of 10. I'm gonna give it a solid 9 out of 10. I very much enjoyed my time with it. From, time and time again, I still listen to the studio live rendition of this album. It's by far one of my favorite, like, live set things that anyone has ever done. It's really good, and I highly recommend people go watch it.